All right, hello, welcome back to Gay by Gay.
Hello.
Yeah, it's just Aaliyah and I today.
Yeah.
Charlie is MIA for whatever reason. Late again,
She's gone.
as always. Fell off the face of the planet. Will probably resurface. Actually, you know what? She may have just been re-abducted by those aliens
True.
that gave birth to her.
Yeah.
So she might just be visiting the home planet.
Teenagers, you know how they are.
Okay, so this is a bit of an impromptu session because Aaliyah and I were chatting right before one of our dance lessons,
Yeah.
and she kind of asked me an interesting question, and we figured that it would be something that was good to talk about on the podcast itself. So, Aaliyah, do you want to ask your question again?
Sure, in the best way I can. So, Abby always talks to us about how she wishes her dad would be here because she feels that her dad would have loved meeting us, the dancers, and kind of getting to know us and laughing with us and joking with us and all of that. And I know that she values her dad's existence in the world.
I do.
And because I know she switched career paths right after her dad died,
That is also true.
from veterinary
Veterinary medicine, yep.
to teaching dance, and her dad was also a teacher. I had asked her if she feels as if, how do I say? Because she feels her dad is a loss to the world, has she taken on any traits her dad would have had and put that out into the world?
So, in a way, just kind of asking, if I picked up kind of more of his personality and everything because he's not here. So, if I'm kind of trying to step into his role and the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a bit of an interesting question. It's not something that I'd ever really thought about before. I guess in some ways I can understand where that question comes from. Because again, to explain, my dad was a severe weather meteorologist, but after he was diagnosed with cancer, obviously he couldn't do the 24-hour on-call shifting anymore just because obviously with the chemo and everything, that was a bit of a problem. So he had ended up switching over to their teachers division. So he became, more of a teacher. And as I said, I actually picked up on his habit of calling my students my kids because he used to do the same thing. So that's actually like a very fair and legitimate question about whether or not I'm literally, in a weird way, kind of becoming my father because he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
To be fair, maybe in some ways,
There's a lot of similarities that come up sometimes.
there are, and it's hard for me to say because he did die when I was fairly young. So, and actually, I do have a lot of trauma from the whole situation where I actually don't have many memories other than what my mom and my sister have told me from before my dad was sick. So a lot of the stories that I end up telling about my dad, I don't actually have firsthand recollection of. I only know from what other people have told me. I really don't have any memories from before that scene in the car where Shannon whipped around and told me, "Dad's dying, you idiot." That's like probably the trigger point for me. And even before that, I have brief flashes of being at the hospital, but again, nothing very firm.
Yeah, because you're young.
I was, and I think that trauma, I don't know whether I have blocked the memories, if I have simply forgotten the memories because they were too painful, or if the trauma really is just kind of getting in the way of me remembering.
Yeah.
I've actually considered seeking therapy. Therapy.
Everyone needs therapy.
Everyone needs therapy, especially me. I need a lot of help.
It's the daddy issues.
It's the daddy issues. In some ways, I do see similarities between me and my dad in that, he was a teacher, I became a teacher, and of course, it was a huge switch for me. I was in school, I'd been accepted to university on their fast track program through veterinary medicine. I got in with one of the highest GPAs, and I ended up quitting and becoming a dance instructor instead. My mom was thrilled. That's a story. Mommy issues. I got those too. Here's the thing. When I was younger, like I'm talking elementary school, and again, I don't have memories of this. It's just what other people have told me. But pretty much every single teacher I had throughout elementary, I guess it's a pretty common question in elementary schools, what do you want to be when you grow up? I feel like every year they ask you that. Every single teacher I had wanted to know if I was going to be a teacher when I got older. And my response was always, ew, no, why would I do that? I'm going to be a vet.
Yeah.
I was dead set and determined from the time that I was like very young, like 4 or 5 years old, like I wanted to be a veterinarian because I loved animals more than I loved people. Still do to some extent. Might explain why I like children, because they're closer to animals than humans, but
I'm an animal.
You are an animal. Charlie's my special monkey, and you are just a hippo in a tutu. I love you. But no, I had always very much resisted this idea of becoming a teacher, and, for whatever reason, everyone else saw it for me, but I didn't see it for me. And I guess a lot of it came from the fact that I have always been the natural teacher type where, if I saw someone was struggling, I would want to go and help them just because that's my personality. Or, I've always had a bit of this ability where if I can see that someone's not understanding what I'm saying, I'll find like a million different ways of rephrasing it until you realize what I'm trying to get across to you.
You're good at that. We do that all the time.
You do, where you look at me with that blank expression and I go, oh, they're not understanding. Okay, how else can I phrase this so they understand what I'm trying to get across to them? Yeah. It's something I've done since I was really little. And even before then, I've never got on with people my own age. And, as a matter of fact, I still don't really get on with people my own age. I do tend to either stick with people who are older than me or people who are younger than me. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I just hate my generation, apparently. But, I can definitely see where a lot of people were like, oh, are you going to become a teacher? Because, here's me wanting to help people, enjoying being with younger kids, having a very high vocabulary and being very well spoken for my age, well written and everything else. I completely understand why people would ask me, do you want to be a teacher? And my answer was always no. Yeah. And it wasn't until high school when I rediscovered my love of dancing. Actually, there's an interesting story behind that one.
Oh, that's a long story.
That is a long story about how I fell into dancing. Yeah. But regardless, my professional career was cut short, which we will get into on another podcast because that's a completely different topic for another day. But so my whole thing was when I went to university and I realized, I really don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be doing this anymore because, number one, I have a huge phobia of needles, and it was bad enough that any time I saw a needle, I would start to pass out. Whether it was intended for me or not, I would start having fainting attacks.
I feel like you always talk about, like, how didn't I know I was a lesbian? How didn't you know you didn't want to be a vet when you hate needles?
Because I wanted to help animals so badly that it was something that I was willing to try and work through. Yeah. But, I kind of came to the realization that being a vet is very hard. You see a lot of loss. You see a lot of tears and everything else. And, over the years, I've had to put down a couple of animals. And I could never imagine doing that as my job, having to be the one to put down an animal. I just, the vets and the vet technicians hold it together very well. And I know me, as emotional as I am and being kind of the more empath that I am, I don't think I would be able to not have a breakdown myself.
Yeah, you would never get used to it.
I could never. And so, I realized at the time, I really need to look at changing careers. I really don't think I can do this for my entire life, and I don't want to go all the way through university and realize I can't do this job. Yeah. It was a lot of schooling too. It was like 8 years of school, heavy science, heavy math, lots of money. Yeah. And it was like, I can't justify that knowing that I might not be able to really fulfill my obligation in this job. So, I kind of started looking around and I was like, who am I? I had known what I wanted to do since I was really little. And, it was even harder for me because on my dad's deathbed, one of the last things that I promised him was that I was going to get through university and I was going to become a vet, just like I had always promised. Because I guess in a way I was trying to reassure him that I would be okay when he passed away. But that put me in a really hard position where it was just kind of like, oh my God, I made Dad this promise. How do I break this promise to him when he's dead and I can't even explain myself to him? Like, oh God. Especially when I came to the realization that I wanted to teach dance and open a dance studio, especially because I had zero classical training. Like, let me make that very clear. I had no classical training. I did not, have any professional lessons of any sort. I took high school dancing, like a class through high school. And that's pretty much the extent of it. I used to do ethnic dancing when I was younger, but that's completely different from, any of the competition styles that we do or get into. I'm entirely self-taught. So, I realized that no studio would hire me, so I ended up opening my own studio to the chagrin of my mother. Sorry, Mom. But no, I inadvertently ended up becoming a teacher. And again, it wasn't because I wanted to be a teacher at the time. It was simply because I wanted to stay involved in dancing, and my professional career, as I said, was cut short before it ever even had a chance to blossom, really. And my way of staying connected was to start teaching. I had to make a role for myself. And, I had always enjoyed doing choreography during my high school classes, even though I was told many times that I was awful at it, ouch. But, it was kind of like, well, no one's going to take me seriously. No one's going to hire me. So I'm just going to make a place for myself. And, if I can help inspire other people to find their passion for dancing the way I did, that's what I want to do. I may not be able to dance professionally, but if I can get my students to do that, in a weird way, I guess I am kind of living vicariously through you guys, because I can't have the dream that I wanted. So if I can give that to other people, at least I'm doing something. You know what I mean? At least I'm helping others achieve what I will never have.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think I'm really replacing my dad. I think I accidentally fell into this. I think, I had all of the qualities of a good teacher from the time that I was very young. And I think, me discovering that I wanted to be in the dance community, but literally having nowhere to go because I couldn't have a professional career and no other studio was going to take me seriously. So I had to carve out a job for myself. And the only real job that you can kind of carve out for yourself is to be a teacher, especially because, even though, I probably more along the lines wanted to be a choreographer more than a teacher, I wouldn't have been hired on because I had no portfolio, because I had no one to teach the routines to. I had no way of getting my name out there. The only thing I could do was open a studio and start teaching, and hopefully if my students got good enough, my choreography would start getting more recognized. That was the only hope I had. So I don't think I did it with the intention of replacing my dad. I think everything just kind of fell into place. And again, I've always liked kids that were younger than me, so it just kind of makes sense that I ended up teaching younger kids more than, and at the time, because I wasn't classically trained, I was kind of like, no adult group is going to listen to me, because they're going to be like, well, what famous person have you worked with? And the answer is, I used to dance in my basement.
Me.
So, the only option I had was to teach kids, and now I really do genuinely love it. I love all of my students like they're my kids. I do think that some of these phrases I may have picked up from Dad, but I think the feelings that I have are genuine and completely my own. I don't think it's me trying to step into his shoes. No. I think I literally just came across teaching in my own way. And, it's kind of ironic because I've had to, I've talked to a couple of my past teachers, and I said, it's kind of ironic. I have become a teacher just like you thought I would, but not in the way you thought I would. I'm a very non-typical teacher.
Well, you're a creative person.
I am.
I don't think you could be a traditional teacher. And
I hate syllabus. I hate syllabi. I can't. I can't.
I know.
If you've ever been to one of our classes, it is what I would refer to as chaos.
Free-for-all?
Free-for-all chaos, and yet for whatever reason, it works. There's a group of people who that just makes sense to, where you get into the space and you work on your own things, and I observe everything that's happening, and I move and I tweak, because everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and I'm there to help with both sides of things.
And some people progress so much faster than others.
And that's exactly it. I have never been a fan of this idea of any sort of teaching, not just dance, but even like traditional schoolwork, of this whole, well, that's too advanced for your age group. Excuse me, what? It's something that I dealt with in school, where I was like, what do you mean this is too advanced for my age group? I got into trouble one time with one of my English teachers because I had actually read a bunch of Shakespeare's works before I got into the class. And, my teacher had told us, oh, don't read ahead. I want to get your genuine reactions. And I had to go to him and explain, I've already read them. And he was like, why did you read ahead? And I had to, explain to him, I didn't read ahead. I read these books when I was in like grade 9, and this is now like grade 11, grade 12. So I read these books a couple of years ago. And, that definitely seemed to shock him at the time. But that's just the type of person I was, so.
A dork.
Very much so. And very, very isolated. And, I think that came from not being able to have a lot of friends around because Dad was so sick. I had nothing else to do. Mom was busy. Shannon and I hated each other's guts at the time. So, I really didn't have anything else to do. And I just fell into reading. And, I read everything I could get my hands on. I loved art. I loved all of that sort of stuff. I've always had a very creative personality. So it doesn't really surprise me that I fell into teaching, but in a very creative way. That's just very much my own unique way of doing it.
I think that'd be a good question for your mom, though. How much you remind her of Dad? Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I've never met your dad, so I don't know.
That's true. I feel like my sister very much got his analytical side.
Yeah.
My sister and I are almost polar opposites. I'm extremely creative. She's extremely, like, if I said brainiac, she actually does. She's taken IQ tests, and she does actually have the IQ of a genius. She really is that smart. Yeah. She hates this comparison, but I know that she'll never listen to this podcast, so I'm just going to say it anyway. If I had to compare her to anybody else, it would be Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
That is my sister. Like, Shannon is literally the female version of Sheldon. Like, complete, awkward, socially, like, way overly smart, and everything else. Oh, there's the doorbell. I bet you it's Charlie. Okay, we're back from intermission. That was Charlie at the door. So no, my sister is very much sort of the brainiac type, and I'm very opposite to her, where I'm very artsy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, whether it's drawing, singing, dancing. I love classical paintings and everything. Actually, there was an exhibit in our city just this past weekend on Van Gogh paintings, and I absolutely loved it. You know, I had a great time. So I was super happy. But yeah, so my sister and I have very opposite personalities.
Yeah.
So my sister reminds me of my dad in her personality type, but I absolutely think that I got my dad's sense of humor and my sort of love of people and teaching. My sister did not get that from him. So I think I have personality traits that line up with my dad, but I don't necessarily think that that's my way of replacing him. I think I just got certain aspects from him, and they just manifested because, again, you know, it wasn't, again, that I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I ended up just having to teach in order to be in the industry I wanted to be in. So I think it all just, the cards fell into place, you know what I mean?
Do you think it could be more like a subconscious thing?
I mean, it's always possible. It's definitely an interesting idea that I had never even considered before. But again, even now...
you have a lot of feelings behind it.
Oh, I do.
So I don't have feelings, so I can say things.
You know, it could be a bit of a subconscious thing. I don't think it is, because, again, it wasn't that I even made the choice to become a teacher.
Yeah.
It was literally just I wanted into the dance industry, had no other way in, and teaching was the only door that was still open to me. So I think if it hadn't been for dance, I don't think I would have ended up getting into teaching at all. You know, I think I would have, honestly, I don't really know what I would have gotten into. Yeah. I think it still would have been creative. Honestly, if I had to pick anything, I may have become an author.
Yeah,
not a journalist, for sure, because, I don't know, journalism just isn't my thing. But
you don't want other people to impose their opinion.
No, I'm much more self-creative in that I want to express my ideas, not other people's ideas. So I definitely think I would have ended up writing books instead if I had to choose anything else. So still creative, but again, I think if it hadn't been for dance, I don't think I would have become a teacher at all. So I think all the cards just fell into, you know, a certain order, and I ended up becoming a teacher, kind of like everyone always thought I would. But I don't think that was me trying to step into my dad's shoes. I think that was just kind of something that happened along the way into my journey of entering the dance industry, and that's all there was to it. I think it was just accidental.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely an interesting question. It's not something I'd ever thought about before. So, for everyone listening, you know, take those moments of deep self-reflection, you know, ask yourself that same question, because it was never something I had considered. So, you know, ask yourself the same question.
I think in the situations of, like, not even just death and things, situations where there's a lot of intense emotions around it, it's really hard to set those emotions aside and look at it objectively. Yeah. And I think that's a skill that's best practice.
It is. It really is. And it's not something that's easy to do, but I think it leads down the path of health. And you know what? If it helps you discover something about yourself, I think that can go a long way to helping. In a weird way, self-reflection is a major part of the therapeutic process, right? You need to ask yourself these questions because you're the only one who can answer them. Yeah. So I do appreciate the question because, again, you know, who knows, maybe it will be something that I go home and think about even more, and maybe I'll come to a realization for myself.
An aha.
An aha moment, as we like to call them. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next podcast.
Take it day by day, guys.
Bye.